My mother died a little over 6 months ago. I lived with her, but she had been battling a cancer diagnosis for a couple of years. Unfortunately, the metastasis was inevitable, and she died after prolonged suffering. The funeral was beautiful. My mother's. Friends came from all over the country to say their final goodbyes. When it was over, I went home, a 10th floor apartment I rented with my mother, but which she never used, having spent her last months in the hospital. Upon entering, there was a sepulchral silence. On the dining table was a vase with some flowers I had bought months earlier when the doctor said she was improving and would be back any day. I left my briefcase on the table and felt my way to my room in the dark. I didn't want to turn on the lights because the exhaustion was shattering my legs. I felt a horrible emptiness in my chest, as if I had cried for entire months. And the truth is, I had. Although I had seen so much suffering in her that deep in my heart, longed for her to finally find rest. The following days were the same as always. I'd get up, have a quick breakfast, and run to the metro to get to work. My office was in the farthest corner of the building, right next to the company's servers. Rarely did anyone greet me. There were days when I didn't even go in, and no one noticed my absence. But I liked going to the office. I didn't want to be at home. Every day at home, I felt like Mom would walk in at any moment. The only times I spoke to anyone at the office were when there was a server issue. In those cases, Mark from accounting or Jane from human resources would come by with excessive friendliness, so I'd attend to their problem. There was a point where I had gone so long without speaking to anyone that I intentionally created a fault in a user's account just to have someone to talk to. And so the days passed without speaking to anyone, to the point where I no longer even looked at myself in the mirror before leaving the house. Until one ordinary day on my way home, I found that the building elevator had broken down. There was a white sign with blue details instructing residents to use the stairs while the technical issues were resolved. It was too many floors. I was grateful I hadn't gone grocery shopping that day, as it would have been an ordeal. I started climbing. My legs hurt as I climbed the empty stairs at almost 11 p.m. Suddenly, as I was reaching the 7th floor, I heard a cry. It sounded like a baby. At first, I ignored it, but the sound became clearer and more audible. It was a meow, but it wasn't just any meow. A kitten was crying out in desperation. I opened the door separating the stairs from the hallway and saw the multiple doors stretching to the end, trying to identify where the sound was coming from. I saw a puddle of what seemed to be water at the far end. I walked slowly, watching as the motion-activated lights turned on one by one. When I was a few steps away, the light came on and the image was clear. The puddle was blood, and the meowing was coming from that door. I approached and tried to open it, but I couldn't. I immediately ran down the stairs to the concierge desk and informed the only guard on duty. We went up together, and after getting permission from his boss, he used a master security key. The scene was horrific. There was a woman with a mutilated leg lying in a pool of blood, and on top of the woman was a little black kitten, a few months old, meowing desperately. The poor creature came towards me and started purring while rubbing against my calves. I bent down to pick it up, and it looked at me with a tenderness that melted my heart. I held it to my chest, and it rubbed against my neck, alternating between purrs and meows of what seemed like pleasure. The police arrived after about 2 hours. I took the cat up to my apartment. Such a beautiful little creature had no business being in such a horrible place. A burly officer knocked on my door around 3 a.m. I told him everything that had happened, and he asked if I knew the woman. I denied any relation to her. I didn't even know her name. The officer asked about the cat. I told him it seemed to belong to the murdered woman, but that I didn't want to leave it there because of the traumatic scene. The officer said he'd check with his squad whether they should take the cat or if I could keep it. At that moment, the cat puffed up at the officer and made that angry hissing face. Cats do. I tried to sleep, but the cat snuggled right on top of my face, making it hard to breathe. But the animal was so beautiful, I simply couldn't be angry with it. Early in the morning, I went to work. I tried to give it some water, as I had no food in the house. To offer the kitten, the day at the office was as long as any other, but I was particularly free of tasks, so I decided to leave a note on my desk with my phone number. Call me if you need anything urgent. Grabbed my things and left right across. From my office, there happened to be a pet store. Upon entering, an older gray-haired man with a mustache greeted me with great cheer. "How can I help you?" "Thank you. Look, the thing is, I have a kitten a few months old staying at my house for now. I'd like to know what's the most important thing I should have while I have him." "Of course," he said with a broad smile. "The essential and most important things are three: a bed, a litter box, and of course, food." I looked through the items and tried to buy a bed that would match the color of my sofa. After all, I didn't want it to clash. I also bought a litter box, a bag of unscented litter, a bag of kitten food, plus balls for water and food. I also bought a little mouse toy. I didn't want the kitten to damage things in the house, but I didn't want him to get bored either. Since I had so many bags, I decided to take a taxi and started thinking about everything. I was missing a scratching post to carrier, also something extremely important. Was missing a leash with a tag so he wouldn't get lost. And of course a name. What was I going to call him? Normally I'd stay silent for the entire taxi ride, but the driver, seeing me so loaded, said, "So new pet a cat, right?" "Yes, sir, it's a kitten." I found I couldn't describe the scene without a shudder. Well found on the street. Cats are like that. They adopt you. What's his name? Honestly, I haven't thought about it. You could call him Rasputin. It's a name my grandmother always used for her cats, usually for black cats. We chatted a bit more and quickly arrived at my place. As I said goodbye, I thanked him for the conversation and commented that I would indeed name my kitten Rasputin. When I entered the building, it was the same guard who had accompanied me on the day of the horrible scene. "Hey, have you heard anything about the case? Do they know who's responsible?" "From what I've heard, nothing yet. The police have come several times and taken evidence, but it seems they have no suspects yet." I took the elevator, grateful it was working again, because I was carrying things upon reaching my floor. I could hear the meowing from the hallway. That sound filled my chest with warmth. Someone was waiting for me. At home, I opened the apartment door, and the cat lunged at me. He was purring like crazy, and I dropped the things to hug him. I felt an intoxicating happiness. "Rasputin," I said, and he immediately looked at me as if recognizing an old friend, but quickly changed his expression back to that of the usual sweet cat. "Look what I brought you." And I showed him all the things. "You must be starving, so I'll serve you some food." I arranged the things and served him some of the kibble the man ate. The pet store had given me. I put the food on the dining table because I had no other suitable spot. He approached curiously, but simply sniffed the food with indifference. "I guess you're not that hungry." I tried to convince him to eat, but he just got annoyed and ran off. My mistake, I bought the wrong food. It would be good to know what his previous owner fed him. I ate a sandwich and went to bed, calling for Rasputin to join me, but he didn't even look at me. He was outside, staring out the window indifferently. It felt like a blow to the chest, but I tried to sleep. At this hour, I wouldn't find the right food anyway. Upon waking, Rasputin was right beside me, sleeping in a ball. I tried to get up without waking him. I'd go look for food. Before leaving, I smelled something horrible, like rotten meat, and realized I hadn't cleaned the litter box. I got a bag from the kitchen and went to the litter box. There was a mound of almost a pound covered in litter. This is too much for such a small cat. I wrapped it in the bag and took it to the outside trash. I walked several blocks looking for kitten food. It turns out there are too many brands. I bought 6 small bags of food, 2 of the most expensive, 2 mid-range, and 2 budget. I also bought several canned foods, about 4. I wanted to do a massive test. One of them had to appeal to him. I quickly returned home and put the food in little plastic cups I had bought for that purpose. I put almost 10 different foods in front of my cat and left him there to see which one he'd go for. He had to eat something. It had been almost 2 days without food. He was going to get sick. Rasputin approached and sniffed each container, but ignored them all. He didn't even try them. He went to my bed, curled up and lay down. No food interested him. My desperation was total. I don't know what to feed him. There has to be something he likes. I decided to go to the butcher for something different. I bought a cut of meat from every animal. I found pork, chicken, beef, rabbit, fish, even a cut of venison the butcher offered me when he saw. I was buying peculiarities. I got home and did the same. Routine, I offered him all the foods, but nothing worked. I give up. I said hunger will make him eat. So I finished my daily tasks and continued with my routine. But the kitten meowed intensely. What do you want? You don't like anything I give you. I don't know what to give you. The cat climbed onto my legs and started nibbling at my leg. Do you want to eat me? Haha, is that what you want? I put him down and he walked away the next day. I tried arranging the food samples again, trying to keep everything fresh. My dining room had become a food display. There were almost 20 cups with different foods to see if any worked. I even put out some carrot and vegetables to see if the little animal would respond to any of them I went to. Work, and upon returning, he still hadn't taken a bite and was meowing more and more. Desperately, I had already tried giving him almost every food, even asking the pet store owner who recommended I take him to a vet because it could be some illness. If you don't eat anything today, Rasputin will have to go to a vet. The cat puffed up in anger, just like with the policeman, and gave me that hissing face cats make when they're angry. What a temper! I started chopping vegetables for my dinner. But just as I was cutting the onion, the kitten ran towards me and nudged me. It was very gentle, but enough to make the knife slip a little and cut my hand. At that moment, I was annoyed that the vegetables were getting stained with blood, so I tried to wash them immediately. But the cat jumped onto the kitchen table, approached me, and licked my finger. How sweet, he's worried about me, I thought, and I petted him. The cat started purring again, and I felt the happiness that had overwhelmed me. First day. Well, at least you're eating something, huh? When I got to the bedroom, I disinfected the wound with some alcohol, because after all, it was a cat. The wound could get infected. We slept snuggled up, and I felt companionship, warmth, and happiness. The next day I kept thinking about what had happened and thought that maybe what the kitten wanted was fresh prey. I understand some are hunters and prefer only fresh food. A somewhat far-fetched but possible idea occurred to me. I could bring a little mouse for the kitten to eat a hamster, or even a small bird. I decided to do it. I went to a pet store and bought a small mouse. I wanted it to be as small as possible. I put it in a box where I couldn't see it. I didn't want to get attached. It was just food for Rasputin. When I got home, I showed him the animal. The cat sniffed it and then walked away indifferently. I closed the box and tried to think of how to get Rasputin's attention. I tried putting it near him. I tried closing us in a room and making the mouse run, but nothing worked. Then at almost 4 in the afternoon, in the midst of desperation over not knowing how to respond to Rasputin, I grabbed the mouse and cut its head off in one slash. The experience was chilling, but somewhat liberating. I took the blood and put it on a plate. I offered it to Rasputin. He approached, sniffed a little, gave a couple of licks, and walked away. Well, it's something I thought I remembered. I hadn't finished my tasks for the day, and ran to complete as much as I could before time ran out. I sent them and kept thinking about how to respond to Rasputin's hunger. Things didn't seem to be improving. My poor animal with skin and bones, and it was all my fault. I'm useless. I can't even have a pet. I was in the kitchen again, trying to prepare something to eat, and I remembered the scene with the knife, the mouse, and the blood. I thought while looking at the blade. I put my index finger right on the tip, and almost without thinking, I made a jab. At first my finger seemed intact, but then a red drop began to grow on my finger. I looked for Rasputin's plate and let about 7 drops of blood fall into it. At that instant, Rasputin jumped onto the plate and licked it as if it were. A delicacy then sought out my finger and licked it. A cat purred curled around my legs and climbed onto me. He was a happy animal again. I felt that I was happy too, and the pain in my finger vanished because of the great love I was receiving from the beautiful Rasputin. In the following days, I went to a pharmacy and asked the clerk what was the best way to extract small amounts of blood. I also asked how much blood I could take without it affecting me. He gave me a syringe and some instructions. He said that for glucose tests, only a drop was necessary, and that I should be very careful. I arrived home happy. I sat on the sofa, took out all the instruments, drew a full syringe of blood, and served it on the plate. At that moment, Rasputin began to lick the plate with incredible happiness. I tried to touch him, but he reacted with anger. I understand. What a temper. After drinking the blood, he purred a little and rubbed against me, but then walked away. This act gradually became routine. I'd extract a little blood, give it to him. He'd eat, and I'd go on with my day. I had to invest in supplements and more food because I was losing energy. There were days when I felt dizzy, but Rasputin's love made everything worth it. After a couple of weeks, everything was beautiful. He was happy. I was happy, and everything was going wonderfully. But when I arrived at the building, the police were there. They indicated they had to search for information about the crime. They asked to check my apartment, and upon seeing Rasputin, who was plump, I said, "Look, this is my larger feline." The officer saw the syringes in the kitchen and asked me why I had them. I became a bundle of nerves and said the first thing that came to mind. That's because I have sugar problems. For glucose tests, it's just drops. Yes, the thing is, my device doesn't work well, so I have to use more blood. I see, said the officer. Let me see it. My nephew is diabetic. I could help you adjust it. No, I have it put away, and why bother? Besides, you have a jaguar or a tiger to find, don't you? The officer left, and I quickly went to the kitchen to get the syringe. I was an hour late with Rasputin's feeding. I drew almost double the blood from the first time and got dizzy, but this time Rasputin responded with the same cold indifference as the first time. It destroyed me. I kept thinking about it. I don't know what to do. I tried extracting more, but the animal didn't respond. In the midst of desperation, over not knowing how to respond in Rasputin's coldness, I looked in the kitchen for the sharpest knife. I tried to find the meatiest part of my leg and cut into it with one slash. It was just a few centimeters of flesh, but my beautiful Rasputin responded with great happiness and devoured it eagerly. 3 weeks passed, and I had to keep cutting carefully, disinfecting and sealing the edges, so I wouldn't bleed out. It's meticulous clockwork, like work of balance. Rasputin was radiant. His black fur shone like tar under the dining room light, and his purrs were deep satisfied, the engine of my world. When he looked at the fresh bandage, his golden eyes would dilate with an interest that made me smile. But one night, Rasputin's hunger was unbearable. His meows were no longer complaints, but a low guttural growl that didn't come from a small animal. When I turned on the light, his shadow on the wall wasn't that of a kitten, but of a hunched creature with a hump and disproportionately long limbs. His eyes fixed on me gleamed with an ancient, hungry intelligence. More, a voice whispered, not a meow, but a rasping sound that came from its throat. It was then I knew I wasn't feeding a pet, but a parasite that had adopted the most convenient form to trap me. Before I could react, Rasputin leaped from the table, not with a cat's agility, but with the disjointed, swift movement of an insect. His legs, now long and thin, like black rods, pinned me to the floor. I felt its breath, which smelled of old blood and cemetery earth on my face. The thigh now had shredded. Voice whispered as one of its claws settled cold as metal on the bandage on my leg. I couldn't believe it. My beautiful cat was actually a monster. It can't be. This must be a lie. But it lunged at me and licked my neck. I felt it would bite me that instant, but I found the knife nearby and plunged it into the creature's side. The entity emitted a shriek of pain and jumped away. At that moment, it tried to transform back into a cat, making eyes full of suffering, seeking my remorse. But the transformation failed. It flickered like an old television between the horrible image of the monster and that of the beautiful kitten. I felt as if my life had been destroyed. The only beautiful thing was actually a monster. It can't be. This monster must have eaten my beautiful Rasputin. Or maybe it's just mimicking him. It saw that I loved my cat and took his form to deceive me. I ran down the stairs at full speed, my eyes filled with tears, stumbling from the damage done to my leg. I'm writing this from a cold interrogation room at the police station. The smell of stale coffee and disinfectant can't mask the sickly sweet stench of my own infected flesh. Paramedics arrived at the building and found me on the stairs, losing blood, a knife still in my hand. They say I was screaming something about a shadow with a hump. The police searched the entire apartment. They found no sign of Rasputin. They don't believe what I tell them. I show them the bandages on my legs. I tell them about the shredded voice and the elongated shadow on the wall. They nod with compassion, noting delirium in their report. One of the officers recognized me. He asked if I was the man who was there when they found the dead woman. Now they think I did it, so they're calling my lawyer. But I know the truth. It was the monster, and it's waiting for me. I had to sleep with my parents far longer than most kids do. They woke me up nearly every night, at least until I learned to do it myself. I wasn't allowed at sleepovers because of their fear that something would go terribly wrong. When I needed it, they would help me gain consciousness by kneading my armpits and knee pits. The neurologist said that if the hyperventilation continued to cause seizures, I could lose my ability to speak, my memory, and my overall independence. So they had to adapt. And it cost me most of my childhood. When I finally figured out how to wake myself up, the sleep paralysis got better in some ways and worse in others. I was able to get the breathing problems under control. But the dream state hallucinations escalated. A little boy wearing a disfigured horse head like a mask. A young woman hanging in the corner of my room, her neck bent downward with her chin buried in her chest. My father, without his mouth or eyes. Storkman was appearing more frequently. He started looming closer to my face while I was in these catatonic states. He would whisper to me in a language that I've never been able to decipher, often for what felt like hours. But when it got bad, I'd remember my 5-step plan. Step 1, recognize that you're dreaming. You can't move and you're seeing things. This is not reality. Step 2, stay calm. It will only get worse if you start panicking. Step 3, wiggle. Start with your toes. They're always awake, just like your mind is right now. Wiggle them. You're now moving. You're not paralyzed. Continue to your ankles and then your knees and hips. Step 4, sit up. When you can. Sit up. Don't panic and sit up. Step 5, you're awake now. Write down what you can. Remember, you'll learn from your experience. It's been about 17 years since I first implemented that plan. I've now documented over 1,500 episodes. Some only last a couple of seconds, but most make it harder to fall asleep the next night. Lately, the main constant I can rely on is my wife. Having someone you trust beside you helps. She keeps me grounded. The hallucinations aren't always as vivid and she often helps me wake up without my usual procedure. I still have bad nights, but she's there to comfort me when it's over. She helps me log everything with more detail, so I continue making progress. She's also been trying to get to the bottom of my issue, even though my psychiatrist has reinforced the same diagnosis that my neurologist gave me years ago. Tertiary narcolepsy, they call it. I'm not like the narcoleptics you may think of. I don't fall asleep at random times, like a goat that's been jump scared. I really don't even have issues with daytime sleepiness. I'm tired at normal times, unless I experience a bad episode that keeps me up. The main distinction with my diagnosis is that my brain functions like it's on LSD once I enter REM sleep. For normal people, their REM cycle causes a vivid dream state where their brain is highly active. But regulated DOT, this mirrors the brain activity of consciousness. It's called paradoxical sleep, that my brain works in overdrive. Once I enter REM DOT, it works exponentially harder, even than when I'm awake. And it's not regulated DOT. I can sense all of my surroundings, like they're one and the same with my body. I experience the severe hallucinations, and my hyperactive vitals are always a threat all of this, while my body is in a state of atonia. If I were ever unable to wake up, if I was stuck in my sleep paralysis, my heart could work itself into a rupture. I'd asphyxiate on my own blood while sleeping. That's the other sentiment that my doctors have shared. It's a miracle that I haven't died, despite this diagnosis. My wife believes that the stork man is the root of my issue, that he means something to my subconscious. I didn't buy this theory until the other night, when he whispered to me in a language that was different. It was hardly noticeable, but it didn't involve the guttural clicks and deep exhalations that I'm used to hearing. It was more clear. It was human. Ru-nu-shi. I butchered the pronunciation when I squirmed to life in a cold sweat, shaking my wife awake to announce the sudden development. And she recognized something about this word, that it was likely Latin. So we stayed up through the morning, combing the Latin dictionary until there were no doubts about what I heard. Rena C. The Latin root of the modern word renaissance, a verb that means to be born again. It makes sense, right? For a stork to tell me this, to imply something about birth and about change. It's odd now, looking back to when I started calling him the stork man. I was very young, probably with only a couple of bird species in my lexicon. It's not like he looks like any particular type of bird. His beak is long, like that of a stork or heron, but it's more of a fleshy protrusion than one made of hard cartilage. His eyes are positioned at the side of his face, wide and always glaring, and perhaps his most disturbing feature hides behind his thin, veiled shawl. He's shown them to me on a number of occasions. They touch the floor despite his 7-foot frame with ease, jagged, emaciated, and gnarled, each malformed crank, coupled with localized blooms of misshapen feathers that segment his otherwise naked, leathery appendages. His disgusting wings, they often rub up against me as he puffs into my frozen face with his clicks and gurgles. Is a traumatic event every time I encounter him, but it's routine. Following this episode from just over a week ago, my wife and I expanded on her theory about my nemesis and my subconscious. It had to mean something that I initially named him what I did. After all of this time, he says this, we wondered if this thing about rebirth could relate to the recent curbing of my symptoms. Before that encounter, I hadn't experienced a memorable hallucination in 94 days. By far the longest stretch that I can recall. She brought up the possibility that the stork man could be threatening me with an incoming assault of visions. His sudden voice could be a war cry against my dream self, saying that the ailment was about to come back stronger than ever. I countered this thought process. It was certainly possible that the opposite was true. Maybe I was finally conquering this, reforming myself, and the stork man was simply saying his goodbyes. But along the way, I forgot something. The first step of my 5-step plan. The reminder that I'm not dealing with real beings. Beings that have goals. They are hallucinations. The stork man is not real. He didn't just appear to relay something to my subconscious. He is my subconscious. Just like every other hallucination I've ever had. And that realization made us panic. Our little boy turned 5 years old the night the stork man spoke to me. That was the age that I first saw him, at least from what my parents told me. The terrifying reality is that I carry the recessive gene that could pass this horrible sickness on to our boy. My subconscious was preparing me for even more years of trauma, telling me that my disease would rekindle itself. Within my child, it had been warning me of this possibility for years. My poor wife would now be dealing with constant panic attacks in the middle of the night, not knowing if the two people she loved the most would wake up. Not knowing if one of us or both would die. Frozen in fear. So all we could do was wait. My wife was sleeping in his room every night. Waiting. Knowing that I was equipped to wake myself up, knowing that our child wouldn't be able to do the same should he have his first run. In. Night after night, monitoring his sleep like a security guard, protecting an empty warehouse. And she was right about the incoming assault. Experienced some of the worst episodes of my life in that span. Night after night, my darkest visions manifested themselves all at once. The horseboy climbing on top of me like a jungle gym, whinnying as his gored cowl bobbled and sloshed with every sudden excited movement. My mother, who overdosed when I was in my teens, sobbing aggressively as she knelt praying at the foot of my bed, begging for my forgiveness. The hanging woman, now directly above me, close enough that I smelled her rotting feet as they dangled over me, her bent neck angled so far downward that her dead face stared at me straight on, mouth unnaturally agape. Like she wanted to tell me something. It all culminated tonight. Episode number 1564. The stork man entered my room as he usually does. He phased through the wall directly in front of me. Beak first, he cocked his head, showing me his left eye, and then his right. Wide and focused. The shawl dropped to reveal his vile limbs. His talons scratched the hardwood as he glitched forward with his bird-like mannerisms. He whispered and rattled, but it was coherent. Rena sigh. He towered above my carcass. I tried to wiggle. I knew what was happening. Nothing worked. He hunched over me, saliva seeping out of his improperly sealed gape. He wheezed again. Rena I was looking directly into his mouth. It was darker than black. He stooped further, now closer than ever. He opened wide enough for me to understand blindness. I couldn't even see the black, just nothingness. I felt him swallowing my immobile head with his proboscis. Wet and cold, rancid, smelling. His throat rippled, and then it was loud. Rena blinded by him, deafened by him. I could still feel him. Time was irrelevant, but it had to be forever. And then I woke up. Back in my childhood bed, and now I'm sitting here, writing everything down. I have no way to explain to myself what just happened. I'm looking around my room, remembering things that I haven't thought about in years. My pile of PS4 games is still on the floor in the corner. My unopened second edition Bumblebee figurine is staring at me from the shelf that my dad and I built specifically for him. I wonder if he saw anything. My mom is whimpering as she often did. I have a feeling they know I'm here. Why didn't they wake me up? Maybe I'll go check on her, but I'm still trying my best to remember. The episodes stand out the most. Might be all I have. I remember getting married in New Orleans. That I remember the honeymoon in Italy. I remember our argument about the baby. I remember taking him to his first rodeo. I remember how much he loved it, just like I do. I remember her depression after he was born. I think I forgot to pick up her prescription. I've remembered as best I can, but I can't remember their names. I can't remember their faces. The month I had to spend every summer at a children's camp was the most loathed period of the year for me. A place where children were supposed to rest, laugh, and socialize with their peers was, for me and the other wards of Clover Camp, hard labor. A tour of duty. A burden we were forced to shoulder year after year, and did so, paying with our strength, our sanity, our health. And someone, every year without fail, paid with their life. Of course, children usually didn't die at the camp itself, but later after returning home. Clover Camp could not be shut down because of camper deaths. We made sure of that, and hoped the next one dead would be someone else. From the outside, the place looked like an idyllic children's camp. We lived in cabins in a pine forest, almost on the shore of a clear woodland lake with a small sandy beach. The counselors were young teachers or recent graduates from education programs, using modern child development techniques. Spacious rooms, each comfortably housing 6 boys or girls. Sports competitions, creative projects, quizzes, developmental activities. Outdoor games. Clover Camp had everything needed to attract new children every year, aged 8 to 16. And new children arrived every summer. First-timers were easy to spot among those who had already survived a shift. They looked forward to a month away from their parents, new friendships, fun, maybe a summer crush. Their faces shone among ours. Temporarily, of course. On the very first day, their more experienced roommates or kids from older groups would explain how things really were. It took a few more days for them to understand. It wasn't a joke. Not a prank on newcomers 1 or 2 days if the contact started immediately, or about 6 if the beginning of the shift was relatively quiet. In the summer of 2005, I was 13. It was my 5th stay at Clover Camp. On arrival day, I stand on the long porch in front of our room 4th unit. Room 3, wondering how many newcomers I'd see when I opened the door. Dima Shtikov, my longtime friend and comrade in arms, whom I'd met during my very first year here, and who's assigned to the same room again, sighs impatiently behind me, a heavy blue duffel slung over his shoulder. Why are you stuck? Open it already. With a tight feeling in my chest, I pull the door open. My gaze falls on the faces of 4 boys who are destined to be my roommates. This shift. It isn't that bad. Philip, Fat Vadim, and Kostik, his friend from last summer. All of them had been here before. The 4th, a lanky red-haired kid, is clearly new. He is unpacking a large black backpack, laying out necessities on his bed. His smile is stiff, strained well. At least he is reading the room correctly. When Dima and I enter, the boys visibly relax. Vadim collapses onto his bed in relief. Philip grins widely. Kostik raises a fist in a triumphant gesture. We are all glad only one newbie. Dima and I greet the veterans, exchange small talk about how the year went. Seeing that everyone already knows each other, the newcomer decides not to lag behind. A bit shyly, he joins us. Yura, he introduces himself, shaking our hands. Unsure whether, as a newcomer, he has the right to sit on someone else's bed, he leans against the wardrobe instead. He tries to fit in, listening more than speaking, a good sign, I think. Do you believe in scary stories, newbie? Philip suddenly asks in the middle of the conversation. Magic stuff? Evil spirits? Huh? Yura is caught off guard. He looks at Phil, then uncertainly scans our faces, expecting grins, teasing, some sign this was a joke. There are none. Our faces are serious. Dead serious, if such a thing can be said. Finding no clues, he answers. Well, I don't know. There's this woman, Aunt Claudia, in a nearby village. They say she's a witch. Supposedly, even Yeltsin came to her for advice in the 90s. And a guy from my class told me he once walked through a cemetery at night and saw this green glow, but I think he's lying. No way he'd go there at night. Yura? I interrupt, loudly and firmly. He stops at once and looks at me. This camp isn't ordinary. We'll explain everything tonight. You won't believe it, almost nobody does at first, but try. Until evening, stick close to one of us. It's important. You don't want to stumble into something out of ignorance. Pay attention to your surroundings. If you notice anything strange, tell one of us immediately. Don't interfere on your own. After lights out, we'll tell you everything. I try to smile reassuringly, not sure how well it works, and step back onto the porch. I will unpack later, once the others are done. Passing our cabin, there go Alina and Kirill. Alina is our informal leader, an artist. Talents like hers are rare, and because of that, and because of her importance to our work artists, are always generals in our secret war. Kirill is also an artist, though a simpler one. He is a year younger than Alina, so next year, when she won't be able to return, he will take over. Behind them walks a small girl with a blue backpack on her shoulders. A first-timer, most likely. The corner of a sketchbook stick out of her pack. Catching my eye, Elena waves and makes a brushing motion, like a paintbrush on a canvas. Artist, she mouths silently, giving me a thumbs up. The day passes quietly. In the evening, the newcomer receives a very good demonstration. Guys, there's someone's looking out from behind the trees. His bed was by the window, opposite the door. We gather beside him and look out where he points with a finger that barely trembles. And indeed, in the forest, brightly lit by the setting sun, someone is peeking out from behind a tree. A human silhouette. The face is impossible to see. It leans out, stares presumably at us for a few seconds, then hides again. The action repeats about once a minute. Rule 12 of the safety rules, Phil says loudly. If someone is staring at you from the forest, don't stare back and close the curtains for at least half an hour. Better an hour. And don't go to the bathroom for now. It's in the forest. Safety rules? Yura tears his gaze away from the window and looks at Phil in confusion. Phil goes to the wardrobe, reaches behind its back panel, and pulls out a dusty green notebook. Here, every room has one. Every unit. Always behind the wardrobe. Written mostly by, well, let's say specific experience. We have to add to it from time to time. That's the worst part. He shows Yura the pages. The first 3 are almost completely filled. Lines written in different hands by multiple generations of boys. Most are riddled with mistakes, blotches, uneven handwriting, the handwriting of frightened teenagers with one goal: survive the shift. Rule 12. Phil points to the bottom of the first page. If someone is staring at you from the forest, don't stare back and close the curtains for at least half an hour. Avoid the forest for an hour unless absolutely necessary. See? I've practically memorized it. You should too. And always put the notebook back behind the wardrobe. It can be a matter of life and death. Yura stares at Phil, then glances at the window, already curtained by Daima, and silently sits down on his bed, reading. He still suspects some elaborate prank, an initiation ritual. In a way, that's exactly what it is. But the idea of a joke has to be abandoned as soon as possible. And in my opinion, he isn't hopeless. Open to new things. Even if they contradict everything he thought he knows about the world. A couple more days, and if he doesn't have terrible luck, he'll adapt quickly. That shift overall was the quietest I can remember. Kids from the 5th unit say something walked on their cabin roof one night, then the footsteps stopped and loud knocking began inside their wardrobe. One evening, Kirill the artist saw children sitting by the lake, dressed in soaking wet winter clothes. A few other isolated incidents. But by the end of the shift, we even managed to feel something like a normal children's camp badminton tournaments, lineups, group songs. Only one thing troubles the counselors. Not a single child signed up for forest orienteering. Everything is quiet. Almost. Our final night of the shift arrives. In other camps, it's called Royal Night. We call it that too, but for different reasons. Because the shift has been calm, our mood is usually a little lighter, but on Royal Night, any optimism evaporates. It would be too good if the shift ends without incident. Something will happen. Somewhere. We all know it. Darkness falls. The light in the room is off. No one speaks, but I know for certain that no one is sleeping. Everyone is waiting, listening to the sounds of the forest beyond the old window. Even closed, it lets the noise through. We don't know exactly which sounds we're waiting for. Growling, whispering, footsteps soft and creeping, or mad and fast, beating out the rhythm of a charging creature. A scream. The last isn't so bad. Perhaps the danger came to another unit. Perhaps it was repelled and won't come for anyone else, and will greet the dawn in peace. It's ugly, of course, to feel relief when danger finds someone else. But don't expect too much from terrified 13-year-old boys who have seen more than you ever have. A creak outside, the porch. Our hearing sharpens to the limit. Did I imagine it? Another creak. Closer footsteps. I didn't imagine it. A quiet moan, not outside, but inside. Kostya. So, something is on our porch. Our unit has 4 rooms, 2 boys, 2 girls. In every one of them, no one is sleeping. Everyone heard the creak. The chance it will come to your room is 25%, and everyone is praying not to draw the unlucky lot. I don't think prayers work here, but I still close my eyes and whisper incoherent words to no one in particular. The footsteps pass the first room. 33.3%. Past the second. 50%. Moonlight illuminates Dima's pale face. His bed is right by the entrance. Mine is next, in the corner. He's my friend, but in my heart, I'm glad there's someone between me and the door. Even if that someone is my comrade in arms. Sue me if you want. The footsteps stop at our door. Through the small window above Dima's bed, I see a dark silhouette hesitating by the entrance. Human-shaped, adult-sized, but without discernible details. The figure seems to think, to listen to itself. Then it slowly raises a hand and pushes open the creaking door. The unlucky ticket is ours. Someone had to draw the black mark. No time to whine. The danger has come, and we must resist it. Whatever has entered our room, we must act so that our room survives. Rule 1 of the common notebook behind the wardrobe. If danger has come, act. Survival instructions follow below. Rule 2 of the common notebook behind the wardrobe. If there are no survival instructions for this specific situation, try to survive and tell as many campers as possible what exactly did you do to survive. Yura lets out a muffled sob. This is his baptism by fire. He's lucky it happens at the end of the shift. The rest of us make no sound. Panic will only make things worse. Our eyes are fixed on the figure. It slowly reaches out and switches on the nightlight by the wardrobe. Ella Vladimirovna, our counselor, or rather something wearing her shape. Something smiling at us with her lips far too wide. One of her eyes is half closed, like a sleeping person's. The other keeps rolling back, and something inside her has to exert constant effort to keep looking at us. In her hand, clumsily clutched, is a black plastic bag. "You're not sleeping, boys?" it asks, never narrowing its smile. Rule 7 of the Common Notebook behind the wardrobe. If something has possessed a person, it's easy to tell. But it's better not to let it know that you know. "We're awake, Ella Vladimirovna," Phil whispers, his voice dry. The single open eye fixes on Phil. Dragging unfamiliar, borrowed legs, the thing shuffles toward his bed. It awkwardly raises a hand and tries to pat his head with a limp, dead-hanging palm. Phil turns visibly pale. "Good boy," Ella Vladimirovna says. "Do you know what little children usually do at camp?" Phil shakes his head with difficulty. The creature doesn't seem to recognize the gesture and waits a few seconds for an answer. Then it opens Ella Vladimirovna's mouth again. "At camp, at night, children tell scary stories and summon spirits." Without taking its gaze off Phil, it reaches into the bag. "And I have everything we need right here. Let's not break tradition, children. Come here, all of you, onto this good boy's bed." Children at camp really do those things. They tell horror stories. They summon things. We have to play along. Slowly, as if in a trance, we rise from our beds and approach Phil's. With every step, each of us searches for a reason to refuse Ella Vladimirovna. There are none. She sits down on the edge of the bed. "Well then, children," it smiles only with the left side of its mouth. I have never seen such a smile on a human face. It begins on the left and ends exactly at the center, dissolving into tightly clenched lips. I don't think that's physiologically possible. Do you know who we're going to summon? Possibilities flash through my mind. The Queen of Spades, the Swearing Gnome, Pushkin, the Babadook, a mushroom spirit. We're going to summon the Queen of Spades. A triumphant spark flares in Ella Vladimirovna's eye. Advertisements fuck anyone but the Queen of Spades. I've never summoned anyone. There are no suicides at Clover Camp. But the Queen of Spades is part of school folklore, and not a single story about her ends well or humorously, like the ones about Swearing Gnome. From the bag, it takes out a small mirror and a tube of lipstick. Ella Vladimirovna's eyes dart between us. Stay calm. Don't look her in the eyes, but don't look away. Don't close your eyes. I don't know where that thought comes from, but I fix my gaze on her chin. Not aggressively, not in challenge, but without showing fear. "Vadim," Ella Vladimirovna says. "The choice is made. This is Vadim's fight. Dima." Exhales softly in relief. The creature hands the lipstick to Vadim. His hand trembles as he takes it. Vadim, kind, soft Vadim, who lies down to nap whenever he gets the chance. Vadim, author of Rule 22 of the Common Notebook behind the wardrobe. They cannot enter your sleep. But in your sleep, you may see what to fear and how to defeat it. Vadim, the homeboy who conquers his fear every year and has come back for 3 shifts now. Vadim, who can fall asleep even in the middle of horror. Vagim, who in his first shift dreamed that something would appear at night in the second room of the 8th unit, allowing the girls to sleep in a neighboring unit and possibly saving their lives. This is his fight, and he accepts it. "Draw a door, boy, right here," Ella Vladimirovna says, her finger clumsily tapping the center of the mirror and slowly sliding toward the upper right corner, indicating where the door should be. Vadim draws the door. The lines are steady, so steady you wouldn't guess his hand is shaking. That's good. He's focused. He isn't letting fear win. I'd say the odds are 70% in Vadim's favor. Now the stairs. The unnaturally tense finger moves diagonally from the upper right corner to the lower left, from the door downward. Like this. Vadim freezes. Ella Vladimirovna's finger taps impatiently against the mirror. Left, down, left, down, left, down. again and again, until the staircase is complete. The lipstick slips from Vadim's fingers and falls. He stares at the drawing without blinking. Good boy. Now say, Queen of Spades come, Queen of Spades come, Queen of Spades come. 3 times, my boy. 3 times. This will be very fun. You're having fun, children, aren't you? Our counselor asks. Vadim turns to us, searching for support none of us can give. His eyes move from face to face, silently pleading for something. Help, protection, a hint, nothing. Helping now is dangerous, and he knows it. When his gaze reaches me, I widen my eyes slightly and shrug one shoulder, silently mouthing, "Go on." He closes his eyes and takes a deep breath. Then another. Ella Vladimirovna's finger taps faster and faster, harder and harder. Vadim repeats the words 3 times and stares at the mirror as if he's entranced. Though why as if? We all see it. At the base of the drawn staircase, a small flame appears. Slowly, unhurriedly, it begins climbing the steps toward the door at the top. A sharp exhale by my ear pulls my attention away from the mirror. I turn and see Yura standing behind me. His eyes are wide, fixed on the flame. He sees nothing else, understands nothing else. He wouldn't have survived tonight. The only reason he's alive is because the lot fell to Vadim. The flame climbs higher. 2 more steps. 1 more. It pauses for a few seconds before the door, and the room's entrance door flies open, slamming into the wall. The sound makes the girls in the neighboring room cry out. A gust of wind bursts inside, sweeps through the room, and dies out as it reaches Vadim. Everything freezes. The silence is broken only by an unpleasant sound. It takes me a moment to realize it's Ella Vladimirovna, staring at Vadim's face with greedy, joyful anticipation, struggling to hold back laughter. I watch Vadim slowly turn, as if in a trance, walk to his bed, and lie down without covering himself. The house stood still at the end of a long forgotten path, far from noise and far from hurry. Tall trees surrounded it like quiet guardians, their leaves moving slowly with the wind, never rushing, never loud. The air there always felt softer, as if the world decided to lower its voice out of respect. Time did not seem broken in that place. It simply moved gently, one breath after another. The walls of the house were old, but not tired. They carried warmth rather than decay, as if they had learned how to endure without bitterness. Sunlight entered through the windows in the early morning and rested on the floor like a calm visitor, staying for hours before slowly drifting away. Dust floated lazily in the light, turning the silence into something almost visible. Inside, every room felt patient. The wooden floor creaked quietly, not in warning, but in acknowledgement, like a soft greeting to anyone who walked across it. The air carried a faint scent of wood and memory, something familiar yet impossible to name. Nothing rushed, nothing demanded attention. The house allowed thoughts to settle and hearts to slow down. At night, the moonlight slipped gently through the windows, painting the walls in silver shades. Shadows moved slowly, never sharp, never threatening. The house listened to the night sounds without reacting. The distant wind, the quiet insects, the occasional rustle of leaves. Everything belonged there. Everything was allowed to exist in peace. The furniture stood exactly where it always had, simple and warm, shaped by years of use and quiet moments. Chairs remembered conversations that once filled the rooms, now replaced by silence that felt complete rather than empty. The table waited without expectation, knowing that waiting itself was not a burden. There was no fear in the house, only solitude that felt chosen, not forced. It did not ask to be filled or changed. It simply existed, calm and steady, holding its stillness like a gentle promise. Anyone who entered felt lighter, as if the weight of the outside world slowly slipped away with every step inside Dot. And so the house remained, alone but not lonely, quiet but not forgotten. It rested at the edge of time, breathing softly, welcoming stillness, and waiting peacefully for whoever might one day need its silence.